If everybody's ready. My name's Kevin Huntley, and this is my dream. I could not be happier to be speaking in front of you all today. Ever since I was born with the fascination of insects, and I don't think there's anything in this world that really competes with them. Uh, it, Growing up, I was just always so disappointed whenever I walked into a visitor's center or an interpretive event. I would always look for an insect collection, and the vast majority of the time, I was just really disappointed with what was available. So about 2 years ago, I got frustrated and decided that I was going to be it. And so I made myself what at first people always call me is the bug guy. And I say I'm only the bug guy until you go to one of my shows, and then I become the insect guy. So the first thing we have to learn about what this world is all about and what we're all missing is what an insect is. Now, typically in my uh, presentations, I do a lot of call and response, but I feel like this is a highly educated group, so we're going to be able to get through this pretty quick, this first part. So the first thing we need to know is what I love more than anything in this world are called insects. And there's three things you need in order to be an insect. We're going to build an insect together. So the first thing we're going to need is three body parts. Every insect has three body parts. The second thing you need is six legs, specifically six. Anything more than six legs scares me, and anything less than six legs bores me. Six is the magic number. And the last thing you're going to need are two antennae. So what I drew right here is every insect. Now, we're going to learn where the word bugs comes from, okay? So in this circle right here that I just drew, there's every insect in the world, okay? There's a group of insects called true bugs. And this is where we get the word bugs from. In order to be a true bug, if we turn this insect into a bug, we need two things. The first thing we're going to need is piercing, specifically piercing, sucking mouth parts that suck the juices of plants or animals. And the second thing you need, it sounds like a bit of gibberish. Now, we've all been taught how a caterpillar completely changes into a butterfly. That's called complete metamorphosis. In order to be a true bug, you have to go through incomplete metamorphosis. Now, that sounds really difficult, but it's quite simple. It's just like praying mantis. So here we have a praying mantis. If you've ever seen a juvenile praying mantis, it just looks like a miniature version of the adult. That is what incomplete metamorphosis is. When the juvenile version grows into a larger version of itself, that's incomplete metamorphosis. Now, one of the only things that changes during incomplete metamorphosis is in the final stage of an insect's life is the only time that an insect is going to have completed its wing development. So if you ever see an insect with wings, that means that it's in its final stage. It's not going to develop any further, and that's an adult. So what I've done is I've created the largest insect collection in Humboldt County. I have over 400 species of insects. Now, out of that 400 species of insects, the only true bugs I have are going to be these cicadas right here. And cicadas, if you've ever heard that, or maybe that sounds familiar, cicadas are the sound of heat. So cicadas are the only insect known to sweat. And they use that as a defense mechanism to be active at the hottest part of the day. So you'll only hear a cicada sound off when it's at the hottest part of the day. And those are the males. The females and they're chock full of eggs. And I had eggs for breakfast this morning. I thought they were quite delicious. A lot of things in nature also think the same. So, so the females, they don't make a noise. They have to hide their eggs. In response to that buzzing, she will tap her body against the structure of that male that the male is perched on to call him over. So I hear a lot of stories about people on the East Coast in the big cicada emergencies saying that any two-stroke engines, so like lawnmowers, weed eaters, and stuff like that that have a slow reverberation attract the attention of a lot of males. The only other true bugs I have in my collection are going to be a very small amount of these beetles over here. Okay, the assassin, what is are called assassin bugs and shield bugs. Those are also true bugs. Everything else is an insect. So, my friend Haley, she made me an awesome graphic. I think it's perfect. So if you can't quite see what that is, this is Batman and Robin. Now, in this situation, Robin found a really cool insect, and he runs up to Batman and he says, "Hey, Batman, I found this awesome bug. I want to show you." And Batman slaps him across the face and he says, "You know better than that, Robin. That's an insect." So, during this presentation, if I, in any case, accidentally call something a bug, I want you all to yell at me and tell me to hold up the sign. Okay? I don't think that any of you are going to be able to make that mistake in this situation, so I'm not going to be able to hold it up, and your fault. So, why are insects important? Okay? Insects make up the largest group of animals on the planet. We know of 1 million insect species. That's known species. All the top entomologists in the world all agree that there is, in fact, 10 million insect species on this planet. That means there's 9 million species left to be discovered. And as a kid, I always thought the coolest thing you could do in science was discover something new and name it after yourself. And on a trip to Guatemala I made about 10 years ago, I did my favorite thing. I hiked 150 miles along the ancient Mayan highway to a temple called El Mirador. And as I was doing that, I was taking pictures of all the insects I could find. And as I left, after I left, I went to identify each one of those species, and there's one that no one's been able to identify. And I brought it to universities, I brought it to every scientific group I can think of. I posted it to iNaturalist, and I've even most recently used AI to try to identify it, and nobody can. So for me, it's a personal intrinsic achievement. This is the only photograph that I know of this species of caterpillar. It's quite distinct in its characteristic. It should be easy to identify, but there's none like it. So I call it the Kevinus caterpillicus, and it'll stay that way until somebody else finds it and calls it something else. So insects, using that 1 million species, that makes up 80% of our animal kingdom. Okay? In this circle, I have one of every species on this planet. 80% of it is insect. We're using that 1 million number. Now, some people tell me, oh, well, insects are small, they're insignificant. Why do they matter? Well, in this circle, I put everything of every species on the planet. It gets worse. 83.4% of terrestrial animal biomass has 6 legs, 3 body parts, and 2 antennae. And this world doesn't even know what they're called because they're calling them bugs. That's insane to me. Now, in this graph, I put the weight of this red sliver, about 5%. That's all humans. The yellow sliver right here, about 12%. That's all the McDonald's animals. That's all the sheep and the cows and the chickens and the goats. And that blue sliver is what everybody else is spending their entire education on. That's the rest of the wild animal kingdom. So I think I got the biggest slice of the pie to educate my community on. And at this point, Because I always get asked, and I'm getting to my most favorite part of my talk here because it's really important, but I feel setting the stage is also important. So I always get asked about spiders. Now I'm scared of spiders, but because I get asked so much, I decided I needed one in my collection. His name's Jeffrey. He's visiting us from China. He's a giant golden tarantula from southern China. This is the only specimen I have that isn't from Humboldt County. And I usually call out to see if people can tell me why Jeffrey doesn't belong in the club. But I'm going to tell you, Jeffrey's got too many legs. He's got 8 legs, and he's got these two. They're called pedipalps. Spiders got 2 fingers by their mouth to help them manipulate food. In this case, Jeffrey's are really long, so sometimes people confuse them as being legs, but they're not used for mobility. Jeffrey also only has 2 body parts. He has the same abdomen as an insect, but this part right here is both parts of an insect, the thorax and the head, combined, fused into one. It's called a cephalothorax. Cephalo is short for my favorite obscure English word. Cephalo is short for the word cephalization. And cephalization is when an organism becomes so complex it grows a head. The process of growing your head is cephalization. So when I was a kid and somebody was making fun of me, I always told them to go away and cephalize. And they never knew what I said, but I got it out of my system. I was able to walk away. So, insects are also the first organisms to conquer flight on this planet before anything else. When I was a kid, I always thought dinosaurs were the oldest things. And I always thought of pterodactyls as being the first things to fly around, but I was wrong. Before dinosaurs, there were giant dragonflies. These dragonflies are what were related to dragonflies and turned into dragonflies is the oldest fossil record. This is that oldest fossil record, 450 million years ago. Now, this dragonfly species, here's a replica of it with also my friend Haley with putting her hand behind it for reference. This is 3 feet long. Okay? Dragonflies have been dominating the skies ever since the beginning of flying organisms. That's why they're the most successful hunters known to man. Now, I could tell you that they capture 95% of anything they pursue, but they're so good at flight that they don't just pursue their prey. They consciously predict where their prey is going to be, and they beat them to it. They intercept their prey. And they not only intercept their prey, they know how to mask their trajectory by doing like barrel rolls and spins and things that look completely unnecessary in slow motion. It's like watching an NBA player. At first, you learn to do a simple layup. You just run to the hoop and shoot up into the net. But at an advanced level, you start learning tricks behind the back slam dunks. That's what dragonflies are doing. They're doing behind the back slam dunks on their prey. Now, the other anatomy that's very important to understand about an insect touches me a little bit because my mom, growing up, my mom had eyes in the back of her head. I couldn't get away with nothing. Okay? Most people might be able to relate with that. They might have a spouse or a teacher or a mom with eyes in the back of their head. They don't got to turn around to know what you're doing. Well, insects have 3 eyes in the back of their head. They're called oculi or simple eyes. Now, these eyes, in our eyes, we have rods and cones. Rods see light and cones see color. These eyes, they only have rods. They're only there to detect light. And they're in the back of their head. They're staring at the sun and the moon all day and all night for 3 reasons. Okay, the first reason is they're using the sun and the moon for navigation. It's extremely difficult to get an insect lost because they're hooked into the universe. They're hooked into the stars. The solar system is telling them where to go. Okay? The second thing they're using it for is orientation. So light, the brightest light source during the daytime is supposed to be the sun. It's supposed to come from above their head. And at night, the sun gives its light to the moon. The moon's supposed to be the brightest light source, and that comes from above their head. And darkness is always supposed to be below their feet. Okay? Now, the frequency of light that comes from the sun gives its light to the moon. Now, light from the sun and the moon for this lesson looks like this. Okay, there's a second kind of light. Comes from fire. Okay, fire, the light from fire looks like that. Okay, we adults, we know this is high frequency and low frequency light. Insects use high frequency light for navigation. They're not attracted or as attracted to low frequency light because they don't want to fly into fires. Now, I know some people tell me that they've seen insects fly into fires, but there's trillions of them, okay? And some of them are going to fly into fires. There's always going to be that small outlier in the population that's going to end up flying straight into it. But in general, insects are more attracted to high frequency light than they are low frequency light. Now, us people, we figured out we can create our own lights. And we can choose what kind of lights these light bulbs make. And most people, they'll screw in a light bulb right next to their front door that generates high frequency light. Okay? Insects are doing exactly what we're telling them to do. They don't want to be in our homes. We're tricking them into wanting to come straight inside. It's what they're programmed to do. And if you watch an insect circle a light at night, you're going to see that the back of their head with those three eyes, these three eyes right here, are always pointed at this light source. They are orienting themselves correctly, okay? They don't know that they're going in circles. So they're like lost in the desert. They're going to circle that light source until they fall out of the sky exhausted. So there's many things we can do to fix this. The first thing we can do is we can change the frequency of light that we use. Okay? We can turn down the frequency so it's a low frequency light. That way we don't attract insects as much into our houses. We could also do things like we can give this light a hat so that it only shines down. Lights are supposed to shine down at night, not up into the sky. Now, what I want to talk to you about today is something I discovered while tackling the issue of insect population decline. I get asked a lot about insect population decline. It's a big monster. I think the root cause of if I'm really honest with myself, the root cause of insect population decline. Some people say it's death by 1,000 cuts, but I think all those cuts can be drawn right back to habitat loss. And I previously thought habitat loss was an issue bigger than me. When I thought of habitat loss, I thought of monoculture farming, monoculture timber. I thought of city expansion, things that were outside my control. But when I over time my eyes opened and I realized how many invasive species are all around us all the time. And these species, every single time it's growing, is taking up space. That is habitat loss. So, when it comes to bees, there's 1,600 different species of bees in California. And most people's education is dominated by the European honeybee. The European honeybee is non-native. It belongs in the orange slice of this circle. It's a farm animal. We use it to pollinate our crops because it's a general pollinator. It generally pollinates everything. It doesn't specialize in any one thing, but it typically works on everything all good enough. So we use it to pollinate our crops. But most bee species are solitary. They live in the ground and they don't make honey. Less than 1% of bee species make honey. Okay, the association with bees and honey is just that the only bee that people get an education on is the European honeybee. The bees that do make honey make it at least in California, make it in such small amounts it's not harvestable. And when they do make honey, they typically mix it with the pollen and it ferments into something called bee bread, and that's what they feed to their young. So when people get caught up with Save the Bees, don't let Save the Bees get hijacked by the honeybee industry. Okay, it's not about the honeybees, it's about the native bees. And when people want to save the bees because they love honey, that's also because of the European honeybee. It's not for the right purposes. People are getting distracted. So, in my mission to learn about insects everywhere all the time because I love them to death, I went to a preservation in my area. It's called Friends of the Dunes. It's on the coast. And when I was talking to the folks at Friends of the Dunes, they told me about a very special kind of bee. They told me there's this bee. It's called the silver bee. So when I went out walking on their property, I found them just like they told me. This right here is the silver bee. It's about the size of a honeybee. It's all black with white hairs on it. And they're solitary. Okay? I think this bee has a great story to tell. This bee is only found on the West Coast. So it's only found in California, Oregon, and Washington. It lives in the dunes and it's been struggling because our dune ecosystem has been dominated by invasive species. Absolutely, as a native Californian my whole life, I thought the beach looked like beach grass. I found out that beach grass is actually European dune grass. The first thing white people did when they made it to the West Coast, and there were campaigns for this, was to plant European dune grass onto the dunes because the Europeans thought the dunes moved around too much and was making their towns all sandy. So they had a mission, a public mission that they made to stabilize the dunes. So they handed this grass out to every community on the West Coast and said, plant this on the beach. We're going to stabilize those sand dunes from moving around. And it worked. It worked really well. It worked to the point that all we see on our beaches is European dune grass. I had a woman approach me and tell me when I was speaking to her on bees and about there was a bee on the beach I was trying to save. She said, I didn't know there were bees on the beach. How can there be? There's no flowers. And that is how far we've gone from understanding what our coastal beaches are supposed to look like, to the point where there are no flowers left. That's why the silver bee's struggling. And historically, in the San Francisco area, the silver bee population collapsed. And as I understand it, and what I've read into the Department of Fish and Wildlife's history on it, there are millions upon millions of dollars being put into restoring the beaches around San Francisco to restore the silver bee population. Now, I live in the northernmost coastal area of California up here in Humboldt, and we're kind of known as being a little hippie. And being a little hippie means we kind of protect our beaches a bit. And because of the historic restoration efforts, I was able to find that we do have a silver bee population here at Friends of the Dunes. But when I did see them, I noticed a problem. there was a species called greater quaking grass. I know it as rattlesnake grass, and it was everywhere. It's from Africa. Now, when this grass blows in the wind, its fruits are on the tips of long stalks of grass. They resemble the tails of a rattlesnake, and they shake around and they cause erratic shadows. I saw this happening, and I saw the native bees, including the silver bee, being irritated by these shadows, preventing them from feeding on the native flowers. And I knew this was because of their oculi. Insects are afraid of shadows. The third thing I forgot to mention, and I'm going to catch up on right now, insects, the third thing that those oculi are used for is predator avoidance. Okay? If something blocks the sunlight, it means that there's a bird and that bird is about to eat you. Okay? Insects are afraid of shadows. So, one of the things you're going to probably learn in a week when you go to that other class, when you look for bees, is you want to find flowers in direct sunlight. Bees don't like flowers in the shadows. So, seeing all this invasive African rattlesnake grass, I saw a problem that I knew only I saw, and it would be really difficult for me to tell my community and get them motivated to make a difference. So I went to the visitor center and I told them about this African rattlesnake grass I found. I told them I wanted to rip it out. And they said, "All right, go for it." So I spent 220 hours this year. And what I did, these are my before and after photos. This is what the trail looked like when I started. Now I know it's difficult for you to see because I have glossy paper here, but this is all brown from African rattlesnake grass. Here is what it looks like now. It's completely ready and opened up for native flowering plants. And I went back to this location this year and I found silver bees. And now they're feeding uninhibited by that rattlesnake grass. That makes the silver bee my soldier species, okay? It's a poster species, and I convince Friends of the Dunes that this is a species that represents our beaches because it has a historic struggle. It involves restoring our beaches to what they need to be. And if we can do that with our beaches, we're going to not just get the silver bee back, but we're going to get all the bees back. And I think the greatest thing we could do is remove invasive species so we can fight habitat loss. That's something we can still do without being some big corporation. In every community, we can do this. When I realized the difference I could make and that this was the biggest impact I could make for the energy I was using, because I can rip plants out faster than I can plant them. So I can rip out of 55 gallons of invasive species real quick, but it's going to take me days to plant 55 gallons of native species. I mean, you can. That is the additional step you can take in your project if you choose to take it. But I believe removing them and allowing that space to be filled in by native plants is the biggest impact we can make. So I started thinking to myself, I said, okay, well, I can do this at Friends of the Dunes. Where else can I do this? And because we live in a day and age where we have the world's information at our fingertips, I did some research and I found out that all you need to remove an invasive species is permission from the landowner. I used to think that you needed some sort of scientific degree and there needed to be scientific surveys and all this money needed to be spent before you could rip a stupid plant out of the ground. And when I found out all you need is permission from the landowner, I found another location where I found silver bees. This time, it was in an extremely ecologically sensitive area. It's at the mouth of a river we have up here. We recently renamed it the Bottawat, but historically it's known as the Mad. So it's in a bit of a transition period. If you look it up, you might want to look up Mad, but we're trying to call it the Bottawat because that's what the natives called that river before we came over and gave it a terrible name. It was actually renamed the Mad because the European gentleman that was on the river, he was upset that day. And so they just called it the Mad River, and we now agree that that's not a very good reason to rename um, a river. So in the mouth of the Mad, there's species everywhere that are that are utilizing that space. And that area was covered in European dune grass. This is an issue we have across California. Okay, it's not just in my beach, it's in your beach. And it's all the way up the coast. It's all the way through Washington. And it's past Washington. As far as I know, it's European beach grass is everywhere. It's a nightmare. So I found out that that location was owned by the county. So I found my county office, Humboldt County office, and I found out I needed to talk to the Department of Natural Resources. And I said, hey, there's this spot that I just want to pull this grass. All I want to do, I just want to pull this grass. It's not supposed to be there. I'm not going to do anything special. I'm just one person, and I care about this location. I found silver bees here. I showed him a picture of a silver bee, and I said, the species it's not endangered here, but it can be. And I think this is a great species, and I know how I can help them on your property if you just let me pull this grass out. And they said, you know, you're the first person to ever ask. And they said, absolutely, you can do that. All we need, all they did was ask me four really simple questions. Okay. And first, when I found out that I was the first one to ask, that's why I'm telling everybody right now. Okay. Most land is owned either by the state, by the county, or by the city. And those are all departments you can talk to. There were even scientific minds in my community that doubted my ability to tackle my own project. And when I did succeed with my project, they all came back to me, and I wouldn't say that they apologized, but they were impressed with what I was able to accomplish and and I want to tell everybody how easy it was, okay? So the four simple questions they asked me, the first one was they wanted me to submit a map of the area I wanted to improve. And that was as simple as taking a Google Map screenshot and drawing a circle. They approved that. That's good, okay? The second one, they said, what tools do you plan on using? And I said, I'm going to use this right hand. I'm going to use this left hand. I'm going to rip it up out of the ground. And they said, perfect. The third question was, and this could be a difficult one. They said, how do you plan on disposing of the biomass? Now, this is where money gets involved, or some tech, because there's best practices and there's good practices. There's different levels of practices. But what I know is the best thing for that plant to be doing is rotting in a pile. So I said, I'm going to put it in a pile and I'm going to watch it rot in that pile instead of growing and taking up space where our native species need to grow. And they said, that's fair. We understand, because I told them, like, I don't have the finances to haul away to green waste everything that I want to haul away. And I don't have a truck. I don't have the means to do it. They said, you know what, let me make a phone call for you. They called the county parks. And they said, all right, since this is close enough to a county park and it's along a trail, they said, can you just make sure that your pile's close enough to that trail that our staff have access to it so they can haul it away? And so that's where a collaboration happened. I made a collaboration happen with a common goal. That was amazing. So the parks got involved. And the last question, they just want to know how long you think it's going to take you. Okay. And guess what? I had my community the entire time I was doing this. The first project was 220 hours at Friends of the Dunes. The second project, I was able to cover a half-mile stretch of 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 a trail system. Okay. It took 30 hours. That's it. 30 hours. One person, 30 hours. My community was walking up and down this trail. I had countless opportunities to interact with my community and teach them about the silver bee and about European dune grass and how it wasn't supposed to be here. They, I got to watch the community's jaw drop when I pointed at the beach covered in this grass that wasn't supposed to be there. And they said, good God, we need to do something. And I said, yeah, I'm doing something right now. And what filled my heart was I watched my community start picking up trash. They wanted to help so bad that on that day, in that moment, they decided to pick up trash. And they piled up a trash pile next to my grass pile, and the parks decided to take that away too. So watching somebody do something about the issue motivated the rest of my community to want to help. So the last question was just, how long do you think it's going to take you? And it doesn't matter what you tell them, they just need an answer because they're a state worker or a county worker or a city worker and they have a box to check. So I say, you know what? You give yourself too much time. You say it's going to take me 1,000,000 hours over the next 2 weeks, okay? Or over the next 2 months. And they'll say, perfect. And they wrote me up a permit and they said, here you go. And the permit said, you can't sue us. And I said, I don't plan on suing you. I think I could figure out how to pull grass. And it was so wonderful that the first project I did, I got on my local news station for, and the combination of projects I did is actually the second project I did is why I'm speaking to you today. It got me invited into this group. It got me invited into the Washington Native Bee Society, all because I was advocating for a bee that was not the European honeybee. That's insane to me. This world, I just want to heal this world, and it needs so much help, and there's so much work to do, but we're still at the beginning stages. And I just love the fact that I got to go back to both the places that I restored over this past year, and I got to see silver bees. And I got to see them flying around without that invasive dune grass and without that invasive African rattlesnake grass irritating them. And I got to see native flowers spring up, and I got to see them covered in bees. And I got to do what you guys just did. I got to bring out my camera and take a picture of do my favorite thing, because ultimately I want to make an insect Eden where I get to take pictures of awesome insect species. And my favorite part of insects is that you're never going to see them all. We don't know how many there even are. We only know of 1,000,000 species. So as I'm taking these pictures, it's the journey of learning about the world that we live in that gives me so much joy. And on this journey, I've made discoveries. I've added about, according to iNaturalist, my mentor, his name's Griff Griffith, if anybody's known of that guy. He's the one that actually kind of sparked my whole path and led me along this. He highly advocates for iNaturalist and Seek. Now, I think Seek is made by iNaturalist, is more user friendly on your phone. I definitely suggest everybody put Seek on their phone. Seek has changed my life. It changes the way I go outside. Because as a kid, my favorite thing to do was to find an insect and then open up my Audubon Society book and try to find it in my book and identify it. Now, we can take that hours and hours of trying to find it and compound it down into a couple of seconds on your phone. Seek will tell you what species it is, or it'll at least narrow it down to a group that you can then yourself narrow it down to what it is. It will at least narrow it down to maybe 10 species. And then you look up 10 pictures instead of 1,000,000 and decide based off of wing venation, coloration, size, all that stuff. It tends to be really simple to narrow it down if it can't get it down to an exact species. But Seek is great for that. You can learn instantly about what's that plant, what's that cool thing on my hike. It changed the way I go on hikes. And then Griff told me, if you have the patience and you learn how to use iNaturalist as a website, it is going to be the greatest new resource in your life. And he wasn't lying. iNaturalist is my dream come true. It is the most worldwide respected resource. It's the closest thing we have to a universal species collection to date. And I think that's really cool because we all get to be a part of it. There's no more boundaries. to being your own scientist and making your own discoveries. In my years of being on iNaturalist, I've had conversations with authors and entomologists, huge scientific minds from around the world. One of the dragonfly species I found in Guatemala, I posted on iNaturalist. If you go on my page and you go through my observations, you'll see it was identified by the author of my dragonfly book. That, and I gotta write him a message. I said, "Hey, you're the guy. I'm holding your book in my hands." And he was so happy to meet somebody that appreciated his work that we had a nice back and forth. You get to meet people like that on iNaturalist. There's no more barrier. And so I think everybody should get involved, and I'm glad that this group is advocating for it and teaching people about it because it's amazing. So, as a Humboldt County resident, I spent about 10 years here. I'm originally from Sacramento, so I'm not just from Humboldt County. I'm also a Valley kid. So I understand Valley carpenter bees and your whole group. And I think the coolest thing is that you don't have to move very far to find completely new bees. We have ecosystems everywhere, and every time I visit a new space is an opportunity to see new species. So some of my favorite plants, because I don't want this to be all negative, is some of the positive ones, some of my favorite bee bushes. Okay? And so right here, I call it ribes. This is one of my favorite early spring bee bushes. The other one, this one is one of the first flowering plants. And I recently fell in love with coastal willow. I did not think of willow as a flowering plant or providing to pollinator species. But because I just keep my eyes open to insects all the time, this spring, since I was waiting for the silver bee emergence, especially in the places I restored, I found out that not they were in the areas I was thinking of on the ground, but the first thing they went to was the willow. And I saw all the bee species on the willow, and I said, geez, the willow's really important here. So it's become one of my favorite plants to advocate for. And the other one is this one right here. It's still in bloom. It's called blue bottle ceanothus. Now the locals here, they have a very, very fond connection with this species of moth. The locals here, when I moved here, called this the redwood moth. Now I understand why they wanted to call it a redwood moth because of the coloration. And here in Humboldt, we have the world's tallest trees. And we consider we I could see they just kind of want to possess this moth, so they call it a redwood moth, so it can kind of like be a part of our community. But this is generally along the entire West Coast, and the true name is actually the ceanothus moth. And that's important because when we call it a redwood moth, we think that there's an association with redwood trees, but that's not true. Its host plant is the ceanothus plant. And I got asked about No Mow May. I've been asked about No Mow May a lot this month. And my response to that is, why do we have lawns? Why are we mowing at all? Every time you mow, you're affecting populations. And I noticed somebody was speaking earlier about bees underneath a patio, and she didn't know what they were doing in the leaf litter or where to find them. 1,600 species of bees. They live in the ground and they utilize everything in the ground. Leaf litter, sticks, pithies in sticks. They and the most common bee species in my area is this bee right here. Let me see if I can't help you out. This is called the yellow-faced bumblebee. Okay, it's our most common bumblebee species. They utilize burrows already created by voles and moles and rats and snakes. They use things that are already created by other organisms. And these are actually, they have an entire, every species has a story. These are super moms because although they are solitary, they will work together with other queens of the same species to ensure that the first brood survives. Okay, so they want to mutually survive, but once they do establish that next generation, that's when they separate. But these aren't the best moms in the world. They're kind of like North Korean moms because they'll starve their first generation to ensure that they develop smaller than themselves because they want to maintain their dominance as the queen. And one of the things that I've seen over the last couple weeks is that first generation is actually showing up. And I get to tell my friends, hey, that you know that really tiny bee you just saw? That's the same species. That's a little tiny yellow-faced bumblebee. And they say, how could there be such a size difference? And I said, she starved them. She starved them because she wants to stay on top. And every generation after that is going to be fed better and better until at the end of the season, they're all this size. And that's kind of the story of the yellow face. But they're all utilizing the earth. And every time we mow, we're destroying that habitat. So I'm a big fan of if and when I'm privileged enough to have land, I'm going to landscape. Okay? There's a million insect species. And as much as people in my life that I've experienced like to hate on insects or call them gross or turn their backs on them, you're turning your back on the biggest slice of the pie. Okay? That's a shame. You're shutting yourself off to the world at that point. There's a million insect species. You're bound to like one. And my favorite game is find out what that one's host plant is. And then you get to plant that host plant into your space and invite that organism into your home. So, one thing that I see a lot of, and I see this a lot in the suburbs mostly. I come from the suburbs. And I'm glad I made it out. But these plants right here, okay? Once again, my mentor, he calls these plastic plants, okay? Non-natives. They're not necessarily invasive because they're not taking over space, but what they're doing is they're not participating. You see how perfect these flowers are? You see how there's no damage on that plant, or I should say, damage on that plant? That means it's not participating. Nothing wants to touch it. There's no life there. You're looking at a plastic plant. And what's the fun in that? I love life and I want everything to be alive. Those plants aren't alive. I think everybody should plant native plants, not because you have to or somebody's telling you to, but because those are the coolest ones. Those are the ones that are going to bring the most life into your world. Right. And another thing you should know about bees, since this is a bee group, okay, one of the biggest, most frustrating things that I've opened my mind to is the Cheerios bee. The Cheerios bee is an abomination to what a bee should be, okay? So, in my collection, these are all the bees, okay? And these are all my wasps. And you can pick out any wasp you want. You know how big or small or any bee you want. There's only one answer to this question. How many wings does a bee or a wasp have? And the answer is 4. Now these are all my native flies. Okay, some of these flies are trying to convince you. They're trying really hard. I actually found these out today. This species right here is a highly cryptic bee mimic fly. And how do I know it's a fly? Because it's got 2 wings. Okay? People love to draw bees, but they always draw them with 2 wings. And I got the privilege of working with the state parks for a season as an interpreter. And in my time, I actually got to make 3 different interpretive displays for the visitor center because the kid in me wanted to see more insects in the visitor center. And I actually made that happen. It fills me up. But my new boss, she had a tattoo of a bee on her arm, of a bumblebee. And I had to tell her there's good news and there's bad news. And the bad news is you got a tattoo of a fly. But the good news is you can fix it real easy. You just got to add a couple wings. Okay? The other mistake I see people make is they love to draw stingers on every single bee or every single wasp they have. But a stinger is a female organ. It's used to lay eggs and it's modified to inject venom. It is a defining characteristic of a female. Males don't have those. So if you see any mascots, a lot of mascots make this mistake. School mascots, sports mascots, any like the Sacramento Hornets, Sac State Hornets, that's a female. It's got a stinger. Your mascot's a girl. Okay, no matter how mean and masculine you depict it in its facial features, it's a girl. Okay, and it needs to have 4 wings. And the last thing I want to teach you before I pass it on to questions here is that wasps and ants share a common ancestry. They came first, okay? And then at a certain point in history, along the lineage, wasps, a population of the wasps decided to grow their hair out and go vegetarian, okay? Bees are just hippie wasps. So, bees came after wasps, and that's why one of the ways you can tell the difference in between all these wasps, they eat meat. They don't need the hair. The hairs are made to collect pollen. So you'll see wasps are hairless for the most part. For the most part, if you look under a microscope, you're going to find a few stray hairs. But all these bees, they're covered in hairs. Okay, and they pollinate. They collect pollen and nectar from flowers. That's just a vegetarian wasp. And I appreciate your time, and I really hope that everybody here truly considers, because when I thought about wanting to volunteer my time, I always assumed that I had to find a group and I had to find a project that connected with me. But it is so much easier to find land that connects to you closer to your space and figuring out that you can make your own project, whatever it is. Maybe it's next to your house. I find that if it's close to your house, you're going to be interacting with it more. You're going to see it more. And maybe there's an invasive ivy. There's no ivy native to America, North America. That was brought over from Europe. Okay, maybe some ivy's upsetting you on your block or on the next block or somewhere along your route to work that you see every day. If it's upsetting you, find out who the landowner is and say you want to rip it out. I hope that you can find a personal project or a group project or whatever project you have. But the key thing we can do as a community is to restore our ecosystem is to start removing invasive species. Give the habitat back to the natives so that life can come back. And if people say they don't like bees, if they don't like bees, I get asked about the silver bee as a species because people say I don't like bees, they sting me. Now that aggression is bred with colony size. Most bees are solitary. They live in the ground. And as a solitary mother, her dedication is to her brood. She is a single mother with a brood at home to take care of. She as a single mother, you can't go out picking fights every night because you got people at home depending on you to bring home food and to raise them. Bees are the same way. So the bees that I'm advocating for, they're not aggressive. They do everything in their power to run away. And as a photographer, you know this is true. because it is really hard to get them to sit still for even to take a picture. Now, honeybees, they have a whole colony and they have a dedication as a group mentality. One can be replaced by many, and that is where that stinging and the association with stinging comes from because most people's education is on that European honeybee and the characteristics that they portray. But bees need, I feel like if people understood bees, they would be more apt to want to protect them. And the more you learn about and understand something, the more you care about it. And so I don't like to tell people what they should be doing because I don't like to be told what to do. I just think that through my teachings, people will find their own enlightenment and that all the things I want to happen will happen organically with understanding. And there is, how much time do I have? 8:09. Am I out of time? Can I get somebody to tell me, am I out of time?
You can go ahead and then we'll wrap up. But we're all
Okay.
really excited. We're all still here.
Okay, perfect. I got two more things to share then. Two more things, I promise. So, there are native flowers. Each flower typically has a specific species of bee that it wants it to pollinate it, okay? So if I'm a flower and I only want to be pollinated by one type of bee, okay, how do I get that one bee and not the other ones? Well, bees, they can see in spectrums of light that we can't see. They have secret colors and they draw patterns on their petals that only that bee can see. They say, hey, you over there, you yellow face. I got the best nectar. It's got the highest sugar content. It's going to blow your mind, okay? But don't bring your friends. Don't tell anybody else, just you. Now, how do I do that as a flower? I just told you. So if you didn't know, I'm also a practicing wizard, okay? I got a really bad goblin problem in my apartment, and they're always getting up to just general mischief. They're always getting into my things like grabbing my keys and moving them somewhere that I'll never find them, or taking the change out of my pockets, or stealing just one sock. So I made these potions. Now, one of these potions, they're going to learn isn't for them. Okay, one of them's nice and healthy and refreshing. The other one I used with the secret color only bees can see because I love bees and I would never want to poison a bee. So I used that secret color. Now I got a magic flashlight right here. It's going to help us see the colors the bees can see. We're going to check these potions real quick. This first one, we're going to check this blue potion. I don't see any poison in there. Okay. And check the second potion. There's the poison. See? Now, if I was a bee, I wouldn't need this light right here. Okay? I would know this is poison. Just like I would know what flowers are for me. Okay? Bees can see in different spectrums of light. And the last thing I want to share with you today is a concept that humanity has recently discovered and we're discussing amongst ourselves. Inside each and every organism that's alive, we have a set of instructions, okay? Our genes, they're called genes, and we recently learned how to rewrite genes in organisms to do what we want. It's called genetically modifying organisms for our benefit or for our devastation. It's all a part of the conversation we're having. Now we think that that's specifically a human trait. We think that we're real smart. And I love studying insects because it's going to humble you real quick. My favorite artist, his name's Alex Gray. Okay? He made a perfect artistic depiction of what's happening. This is a little tiny gall wasp. And we've all seen these weird, strange structures on plants. They're called galls. Okay? And people get the story about half right. They think that the plant's been stung or that there's like a tumor on it or it's something weird, but people just pass it up. They don't think twice about it. Okay? What this is a natural version of genetic modification done to it by a species of wasp. This plant was stung, but when it was stung, there was an egg laid. And when the egg was laid, the genes of the plant, there were instructions implanted into the plant that taught it to grow this structure around the larva, the egg. And they said, whatever that structure is, whatever the technique you're using, I want you to protect my baby. I want you to feed my baby and raise it into adulthood. Okay? Now, I think that would make my life a whole lot easier if I could just inject a tree one day and say, I'll be back in 10 years for my apartment. Okay? Like, that'd make my life a whole lot easier. So, this is my gall collection. Galls come in all different shapes and sizes and colors. And most recently, I want to show you one that I think is extra special because I found out that the Smurfs exist. This is called a mushroom wasp gall. Okay? That is a genetic modification to the plant that creates the structure just like the Smurfs, little mushrooms. Okay? And when the larvae develop and come out, they chew what looks like a little hole, a little door, and they come out the front. Now, if that's not the Smurfs, a magical house, I don't know what is. And so when I teach kids about and I don't understand why there's an association with insects and youth. I don't know where that comes from. It needs to go away because insects are for all ages. I don't know why there's an age on science. That's weird. Okay? These are fairy houses. These are real life fairy houses, just like in Cinderella, where the fairy godmother changed a pumpkin and turned it into a stagecoach so Cinderella could go to the ball. These are fairy houses. Okay, let me see if I can help you see this. But there's a little door on that structure. Okay, this plant doesn't know how to make that. Some of them look pretty mundane. Others, this one I got, okay, I'm cheating a little bit with this one, but it's my favorite specimen. I got this one from Arizona on some scrub oak. This structure right here was supposed to develop into an acorn. It is clearly no longer an acorn. It is an alien starfish structure. Okay. There are also others that grow on our rose bushes. That's a rosy moss wasp gall. And there's others that look like beach balls. Some of them really don't look anything like what these plants are supposed to grow. These plants don't know how to grow these structures. They're given the instructions by a very small species of wasp that has the super ability to manipulate plants to growing what they want to raise their kids. That blows my mind. So the next time you see a weird growth on a plant, looks like that, maybe you think twice about it and think that's probably a gall. That plant isn't supposed to grow that. That plant got tricked into growing that. So we're not the first ones to develop that technology. Insects did it first. Insects did most things first. So with that, I feel like I got most of my energy out. I hope I was able to inspire you a little bit and